Hi there. You are at the speedrun Wyckoff check of these 24 crypto projects from L0 all the way to L2. And the red ones are the ones still in the distribution cycle. The orange ones have entered the early accumulation. And finally, the yellow ones are at least the mid stage, if not the late stage of accumulation. I am not a financial advisor, and these sessions are for research and education purpose only. If you're new to my session, these are the 3 key items I'll quickly go through for the 24 projects that we just seen. So let's quickly go this Bitcoin Cash. So this is the weekly chart of Bitcoin Cash, and last week we already covered that the current stage that Bitcoin Cash is going through is no longer just an LPSY. So this we'll leave it for later. This is currently at least a second test, if not an upthrust of the distribution, because there's still 2 days and 4 hours left for this week's candlestick, so it remains a question mark. The 20% is something that I left previously, saying, looking at what was happening over the past couple of weeks, there's still a chance for it to come challenge the green key level of 615, as you see on the right hand side, or even higher. Just that the warning I've given is also because of this red downtrend line that extend from the previous peaks, both the spirit of April 2024 and also the spirit of September 2025. This one during end of last year was particularly low as well. So the warning I shared was that a couple of altcoins, well, actually a lot of altcoins, are exhibiting a behavior of lower and lower peaks. So that's why we have this red line helping us to observe whether it applies to Bitcoin Cash as well. Looking at this currently, there is clearly some selling pressure if you look at this wick at the top. So if it continues to range bound between this white solid line and this green key level of 615, the white solid line is at around 570 or 580. So that may still be some part of a reaccumulation. There's still a chance of that. However, the chance of it coming back down to the yellow key level of 530 is going to be 50-50 with this kind of behavior, because the risk I've shared in another video about cryptocurrencies or crypto market as a whole is that this current bleeding is because of the unknown that the entire market is going through. This is the very first time since the birth of crypto that they're going through a change of basically Japanese interest rate hike. So crypto was born somewhere between 2008, 2009, right after the global financial crisis, right? Throughout 2009 till now, 15, 16 years, this is the very first time Japanese interest rate hike happened. So this uncertainty not only is driving the change in carry trade and all the other capital rearrangement, but also this is the very first time for crypto market, and of course people would be worried, and that's why you're seeing a lot of crypto even before the October 10th tariff announcement. They have been bleeding already. They have been going into or very deep into accumulation. So let's continue with all the analysis that we have for these 24 coins. So let's go to the daily chart and see what kind of indications we have. We have this trend line that I said, if Bitcoin Cash wants to continue the uptrend, it shouldn't break this trend line. But since 2 weeks ago, it has already did once, and then this time it has, just 3 days ago, it has done another time. So if I extend this trend line, instead of the previous very rapid climb, so the rate of price surge now goes to a more gradual, having a more gradual slope compared to the previous one. All right. You can clearly see today, especially this wick from the top, getting rejection from both the green key level as well as this light blue ceiling of the box. So this extends back to the previous period during summertime where the price gone quite high and set kind of the trading range top that we are seeing now. So this particularly interesting thing over here, this triangle that's been formed between this line that we have just adjusted towards the green key level, at least, okay, the 615 level. This is pointing towards a date of around mid-January, so January 17th. Let me borrow a tag from the other chart. Let's pick a January and put it over here. Why we want to look at January 17th? Because when the price continues to trade along this range, let's say it stays above the white solid line, but still bound by the green line over there. So eventually it will trade towards that triangle, like I said. So these three lines basically governs the subsequent trading, assuming there's no particularly good or bad news that's going to happen. Well, actually, it's one line lower, not even the white line. I was assuming that if it comes to this point, it must be above the white line. But for the next few days, or at least the next 2 days, it can still come back down to this blue dash line just like 2 days ago. Let's make it simple. Assuming it's the white, this trend line upwards, and the ceiling. Okay, eventually, it has to confirm whether it's going to go outside of this horizontal or sideways trading area, meaning it's going to set an upthrust after distribution, like I initially described, or it's going to go outside or below this downtrend once more, and confirming it's going to go sideways within this box, or may even come down to challenge the 530, the yellow key level. All right, looking at the volume, the white days aren't very tall, so this kind of price surge probably isn't going to last. So look at what happened just on the 19th, exactly 1 week ago. That was a lot more optimistic with that kind of volume. You know, much higher, almost double than what we have today. And there wasn't a very long wick from the top. Today, it's a completely different story. All right, half the volume with half volume, half the size of the wick compared to the candle body. That's not something optimistic. So next, we have Bitcoin. After Bitcoin Cash, we have Binance Coin. Binance Coin, again, it has come down for another sign of weakness. So after this LPSY, it's basically come down for another sign of weakness. And I did mention that if there's no more rebound, like what it did just 2 weeks ago, this may not exist. So it can just go all the way to the lower level of 550, this orange key level, and set another sign of weakness at that level, much like what happened back in March and May this year. All right. So the next couple of weeks is key for a lot of these L0 to L2 coins, because quite a number of them, as you see from the very beginning, they are still within the distribution cycle. Very different from a lot of other altcoins. All right. If they come down, then the panic may start again. December 26 was the initial date I previously shared that the confirmation would come, and indeed it has confirmed that it's not going to break outside of this downtrend. All right, you see this red candle over there. The fortunate thing is that the volume wasn't very high for that red candle, so it's still trading along the ceiling of this downtrend, so it's still on the stronger side of the channel. So next potential trend change confirmation may come as early as January 4th. If this intermediate support provided by what happened back in end of November, early December, if this line doesn't hold, the more solid support will be around this blue key level of 740. All right, that points to mid-January for a trend change confirmation. That means that this price drop started somewhere in mid-October would take a pause from that point it may travel sideways before it goes down again, or eventually, new capital comes in and it challenges the new higher levels. One thing to take note is that it's still within this bigger uptrend that started somewhere back in 2023. All right, this trend box, the price is still trading within this trend box. So by the time we get to this somewhere near January 19th, that's going to be very critical, assuming it still continues to trade downwards. This particular point around January 19th, 20th, if it breaks outside of this downtrend, that will lead us to the thing that we talked about, like, it's going to get lower and break some of the key levels and get to a new sign of weakness. All right, so that's for Binance Coin. Next, we have Decreed. DCR, somewhere between the previous automatic reaction or a preliminary support. It's a very tricky situation for DCR because that particular distribution was very short-lived. Ended within a week. The next week, kind of staying at half where the price peaked. Okay, if we look to the left-hand side, there wasn't much of a reference within a 3-year period since late or mid-late 2002. It kind of repeats what happened back in summer in 2022, that it reached a point at around $70 and then eventually died down. So that's why I said it's tricky, because it's like it's got a very quick distribution and then quickly re-entered the preliminary support stage. Just that I'm still giving it a benefit of doubt that this may be an automatic reaction after the buying climax, because the selling volume isn't that high, so it may still bounce back up for a second test and then eventually really gets into the accumulation. So I'm still giving it this kind of positive view as of now, as some of you like me to cover both the positive and negative perspective. So there's still a chance that it's still coming back, even though it has dropped to a price where it has been accumulating for a very long period of over almost 3 years. All right, so that's where it is. And in terms of daily, this downtrend, it was trying to break outside with a very high volume, but remember, this includes quite a bit of selling from the top when it tried to hit or pass the red key level of $23. So if it continues to trade along this downtrend, assuming the positivity continues, that it trades within this triangle, it's pointing towards the beginning of next year. So about 5 days from now, it may confirm a trend change, okay, if it breaks outside of the ceiling of this downtrend. However, if it doesn't, if it gets rejected from the ceiling or the green key level, so assuming it trades sideways like this, the next comes in about a week's time on 9th of January, around that period. It can break out sooner, definitely, and eventually another week later, if it comes back down like a few days back on the 23rd, 22nd, 23rd, where the price came down, finding support at the orange key level of around $14. So that's a slightly pessimistic scenario. Not very bad, because October 10th indicated already that the price can come down to challenge the red key level of $12.30. So as long as the price is still trading within that downtrend, this red line, the risk of getting to that point isn't over. All right. Next, we have Ethereum. Ethereum coming back down, similar to previous ones. It showed the sign of weakness, have the LPSY rebound, get heavily rejected from the 3540 blue key level, all the way back to below the 3200. All right. Already said these 3070 may provide quite a bit of resistance, and it did over the past 2 weeks, including this week. This was set, around this automatic reaction and also around this period. Those were the distribution cycles back in early 2024 as well as end of 2024. So fast forward to now, what we would see is that if it re-enters the accumulation, the first stage would be the panic sell or whales silently getting in period before it gets to the panic over stage, to the selling climax. Alright, so that's how it would evolve if this 2800 isn't going to provide a very strong rebound. I shared in previous sessions that this green key level combined with this white ceiling is going to provide quite a significant support like it did. So it showed a very strong rebound. So from that point of 2800 all the way to where it ended, it was almost like a 25% jump. Alright, and then it's now slightly or slowly coming back down to challenge this green key level again. Alright, it may still bounce one more time. Like I said, it's a dual support, so it's normal for it to do it multiple times before it finally settles to agree that let the price come down, let Ethereum's price come down to accumulate, get a sufficient strength before going to the next distribution. So those are all the possibilities. Alright, and then daily. Here, it's pointing towards this January 11th that it may confirm whether it's going to go sideways or is it going to come down further. Alright, so there are multiple opportunities for it to confirm whether it's going to end this downward trend that started somewhere in September this year. Alright, it wasn't the October 10th that triggered the decline. Back in mid-September, the downtrend has already started. Okay, so if you ask, is there still a positive side of things to happen? Yeah, definitely, because if Ethereum hasn't finished this distribution, it can reaccumulate along the dual support and come back up for a second test or an upthrust. Alright, it has only showed us a buying climax. Definitely there is a chance for it to show an upthrust, but the current sentiment and the capital flow isn't really supporting that. So it has to have significant capital flowing in before that happens. And by observing the candlesticks, that will give us some hints, because even the white bars, the white candles, those combined quite a bit of selling. Like I said, the volume wasn't high if you compare to what happened in summer this year. That period of volume compared to what we have now, we are only about 50 to 60% back then. So these aren't sufficient to support a significant price surge. Next is Hedera. Hedera, trading at the weaker side of the channel currently. Let me adjust a little so it's tighter. Right. So we have to wait for quite a bit before it gets to the point where a trend change confirmation would come. So if it does, assuming it stays around the current, I shouldn't put the date here, sorry, we'll do it later, it's still going or heading towards the selling climax. So after the preliminary support or panic sell period, PS doesn't represent panic sell, by the way, it's preliminary support. So where people sell and whale slightly or bit by bit gets in, the Hedera may be very close to the selling climax stage. So if we go to the daily chart and look at what's going on over here, let me set this trend box back to the appropriate display level so we won't get confused. So January 10th, this triangle over here is still within reach. Alright, if it bounces high enough. Okay, not January 10th, but a little bit earlier, the 6th of January. Alright, but it has to have some volume like what happened back in late October, where it pushes the price back to above the red key level of around 17 cents 50. Otherwise, if it continues to trade within the current range, I would say the current range is somewhere between this white line at around 13 cents to somewhere around this blue key level of 9 cents 50 or 60. Alright, if it continues to trade along this range, which the past few days, this is the resistance for the time being, 11 cents 70. The other day that it's pointing to, assuming it's above the purple key level of 10 or 11 cents, that's pointing to the end of March. Alright, so those two dates are the potential trend change confirmation dates in addition to early January. That's a very positive but less likely scenario. More likely scenarios would be somewhere in March, early March or end of March, depending on how quickly the price climbs. However, that's not the end of it, because October 10th challenged all the way to the center line of this long-term playground on the white box. So if it does come down, then we will have to look at later dates for Hedera. Alright? And it can absolutely happen if it hasn't finished showing us where the selling climax is going to end up at. Obviously, we don't want to see something like 2023 where it ended at the bottom of the long-term playground zone. Alright? It can accumulate higher. But right now, we're not seeing the automatic rally yet, so it's not confirmed where the selling climax is. Alright, when the automatic rally happens, then we will be more sure, okay, we have gone through this period of selling climax. Next, we have Solana. Solana, in a similar sense, gone through a sign of weakness at the yellow key level of 125, showed a very weak rebound at the last point of supply stage, and now slightly slowly heading towards the orange key level of $100, potentially showing a sign of weakness. But like I explained in an earlier project, these two may not always happen. If the price comes down straight to the accumulation, straight to the PS, the panic sell or whale buys period, like what it did over here, after that LPSY, it slides all the way into accumulation, then we won't have these two. So I'm just trying to explain to you that may still happen because April this year hit that point with a rebound. So there's still a chance for these two to show up, but not a must, around this $100 orange key level. Okay, so that's the current picture in a bigger perspective. So again, if you ask about positivity, Solana has gone through just the buying climax and the upthrust. It can definitely show an upthrust of the distribution. But however, like I said before, this is not a likely scenario, even though there is a chance of it going higher, setting up and a higher than the entire 2004, 2007, 2005 period. Right? The world or the capital has to change a lot. If the Fed is going to print a whole lot of money, that may be a possibility. However, would that happen? Time will tell. Quickly get into the daily chart and see the potential trend change confirmation date for Solana. So set a few things just to make sure it doesn't show up at the wrong interval. Currently, it's still within the downtrend, trading on the stronger side of the trend. However, suppressed underneath the this yellow key level of $125. Okay, you see the past 7 to 10 days. Even though if a price climbed exactly on last Friday with quite some good volume, it still ended up being suppressed under this level. If it continues to trade below the yellow and above the orange key level that we talked about, it's pointing towards the end of January. where a trend change confirmation will eventually comes in. Or if positivity comes in during the new year, then somewhere around January 8th, maybe a day or two earlier, that trend change confirmation would come. However, the trend is still going to continue if the January window is missed. And where this 75 red key level comes from, it goes back all the way to 2020 to 2023 accumulation period. And the bad news is that was the period where the drop was taking a pause, much like the climb as well. So the retracement from the climb took a pause around that level. So the reason we have that over here instead of even further is that the April accumulation cycle for Solana ended up lower than 100 but stayed above the 75. So I'm not putting in anything as of now, but just to show you it's possible to go deeper if things gets worse, if capital keeps flowing out, liquidity keeps drying up. Next is Tron. So clearly it looks like it found support 0.273 for 5 weeks, including this week that we still have 2 days left, so we're not so sure, but the wick from the bottom shows us that there's some initial buying from that level. If this is really an LPSY like already tagged and it's not over yet, it may go up to challenge the yellow key level with a slight chance, of course. I'm not putting it as percentage, just to let you know that it can still come up for a second test if the timing and liquidity aligns. Alright, but the likelihood of being an LPSY and then eventually comes down for a sign of weakness is still of a higher chance. And if it does, the reference level for the sign of weakness was what happened back in March this year, about 20 cents 90. Alright, this orange key level right over here. Okay, that's the big picture. Now daily. This downtrend, the price tried to break out on Sunday, but then immediately on Monday it returned back to where the ceiling of the downtrend is, and for the past 2-3 days the price eventually came back to within the channel. So for the next few days up to the point of January 4th, that's going to be key to confirm whether this trend change is going to confirm. Alright, if it doesn't, if it still continues to trade below the ceiling, the next one we have to wait till is around the mid of January, and eventually late Jan all the way into early Feb. But we can cover in the subsequent sessions by then. After Tron, we have Monero, XMR. XMR over here, we have seen its upthrust, which is quite a bit higher than the May buying climax. So from that point around the purple key level of 416 all the way to where it is now, or where it has reached, it was about like a 20% climb. But then this week it's coming back down. It's normal after this kind of surge. For buying climax, we call that an upthrust. Automatic rally when it comes down. So I named this kind of activity and just adding a number to it, so it's the same or similar kind of stage after that particular period. Alright, and if it comes down to somewhere between the blue key level of 388 to 357, that shouldn't surprise you. Alright, and then obviously it can bounce back up again, and this UTAD remains a possibility, but not a certainty. Okay, it doesn't appear every time when the distribution happens. So that's the big picture, and then we have the daily chart. So I've drawn this line in previous session saying, okay, this acts as the support line, extended from what happened back in November. And obviously, over the past 2-3 days, including Tuesday, it provided support, and you see the candlestick stays above that, even today. Just that this level may not be strong enough to hold it even longer. Because 2 days ago, it went below and tested the purple key level 417 already. Just that the bulls pushed very hard. You see this long wick from that point, pushing the price back to above this intermediate support level at around 435. So it's going to be key whether it's continuing to stay above this, especially when it gets closer to 21st of January, right? Because it's reaching the bottom of this uptrend. If it falls outside, that means this uptrend that started back in August is going to be over. All right. A more pessimistic scenario is that it comes through the intermediate support level, this dashed line, only to find support at the purple key level and trade sideways for the next couple of days. That points to the same. Even worse, if it falls through the purple, then eventually the only support it has is this uptrend channel bottom edge. So that points to 11th of January if the trend is going to break sooner. All right, so that's for XMR. Next we have Zcash. For Zcash, like I shared before, it comes up for an LPSY, last point of supply, where whales are potentially doing their final offload if they haven't dumped everything already during the run towards the buying climax. And if you go back to my earlier sessions that I shared with you about Zcash, you can refer to the 2018 cycle where it came down for an automatic reaction, right, at this point, and then it had another 2 LPSYs, and eventually like some smaller rebound before it fully gets back to the accumulation cycle. We have gone through the very first LPSY right now, so there may be another 1 or 2 coming before it fully retraces back to the previous low. All right, so expect it can still do rebounds, but it's going to be tricky because you see the volume clearly has declined significantly. All right, these white bars and the candlesticks, these white candlesticks, these wicks from the top on like they're not disappearing. They're shorter. They have become shorter, and we see buying from the bottom. The bulls are clearly trying to push, or people are like crazily buying the dip. But is that going to last? Looking at the volume, that may not be the case. So be very careful. And for daily, clearly it's trading range bound between these two white dash line, between 372 all the way to 5. Somewhere around 550 to 560. And January 4th is going to be the moment of truth, when the price continues to trade level range within this triangle. Alright, if some people would say this is like an ascending triangle, alright, but I already shared before that candlestick patterns sometimes can be tricky, so don't try to stick 100% to what the textbook tells you. Here, the moment of truth comes when we get into 2026, is that where this uptrend is going to be finally broken. You see this decline of volume, right? If it does goes above this white dash line by Jan 4th, congratulations, there may be some kind of upward movement, even though that may not be strong. However, if it breaks outside of this uptrend that started somewhere back in October, then the thing that I said would happen, that it would come down for more sign of weakness and then couple of rebound before it gets into the accumulation cycle. Alright, there's another possibility if it comes outside. it can reaccumulate if there's sufficient demand. Not that we're seeing that right now looking at the volume. If it does, however, that it can reaccumulate and come back to challenge a higher level. That's also another scenario that can happen. So these are the ones that are still within the distribution cycle. Now we're getting into the ones that are in the accumulation. So starting with the early stage accumulation first, this is still going through the period where the panic sell is over, and that we are waiting to see a rebound or an automatic rally. All right, this white candlestick this week that we are seeing may be the very first sign that we are close to seeing the selling climax. If we go to the daily chart, we see that over the past 5 to 7 days, the price seems to find support at the bottom edge of the long-term playground zone at around $1.80 to 90 cents. If you look to the left, this was where March 2020 found support when it rebounded from their very bottom. However, it hasn't eliminated the fact that these lines are still in effect. So be cautious that the 2020 levels are still going to provide indication whether the test is going to go deeper, because in the bigger picture, selling climax doesn't mean it's the lowest point of the accumulation cycle. There can be subsequent paper hands, diamond hands tests that can go to those yellow dashed lines levels. All right. Just a caveat. Don't expect if the automatic rally comes, it's going to go all the way up. It can still come back down for deeper tests. All right. And just to look at the dates, potential trend change confirmation would come near the end of January. If that's missed, this triangle is missed, then the next would come around near end of Feb. That's for Atom. And then we have Chronos. Chronos, from a bigger picture point of view, it's in a similar period, but then it still hasn't got the white candle yet. So we're waiting for the automatic rally to come, but prior to that, we have to see the selling climax finally settled. All right, if we go to the daily chart, it's trying to show us part of that. The red candles are having lower volume, so it may be stabilizing. All right, October 10th already tested this level, so the immediate risk is relatively lower, but then the 2025 spring to summer period accumulated or tested all the way to the red key level of 0.68 roughly. So we have to be cautious if this downtrend is going to continue, especially when we look at this heavy rejection on the 15th. This may really get into at least mid-Jan, if not late January, or even worse, towards late February. So we'll get to that. We'll come back to this next week. Next is EGLD. This one, still going through this. It's got a little bit of buying 3 weeks back, but then the selling keeps going nevertheless. Similar stage, so I'm not going to repeat too much. Daily chart still trading at the weaker side of the channel, and there's a chance that it comes back to above the orange key level of $6.44, and that will catch the train, pointing towards somewhere near Valentine's Day, that it confirms that a sideways trend is formed instead of continuing with the downtrend. However, the risk is that October 10th showed us, that where the price is currently trading towards is the red key level. That's around $2.80. Okay, that's where October 10th kind of reached that level, and the possibility of the price heading towards that direction is relatively higher to staying above the orange key level. And that would point to somewhere in May. So yeah, it's pretty long time. Not saying it must get to that point before it breaks outside and trades sideways. Just that looking at its current trend, even though the volume is coming down, we still have to be cautious that this may not have finished yet, this downtrend. And then next is FLR, flare. So for flare, similar case as EGLD, still going through this period, searching the selling climax position. This week, when it tried to challenge or go over the red key level of 0.012, it got pretty strong rejection from above. Alright, just that the volume bar hasn't finished yet. There's still 2 days and 3 hours for this week's candle to develop. Let's see what will it look like next week. But in terms of breakout potential window, obviously the 1st of Jan, I'm still keeping a chance over here for the people that are positive. And the more likely scenario is heading towards the middle of January, assuming it continues to find support above this white solid line at around 1 cent. If it does go lower, like what it did back in October 2023, we have to wait for way longer. But I'll draw those lines when we get closer to that point, because the 1 cent level, 1 cent, 11 cents level, it seems like the price is still staying over there, because this one, during April this year, I guess some people are referring to that period, and that's why there was quite a bit of buying activities within this week, until the point where we see the rejection just 4 days ago. And then we have Litecoin. Litecoin, similar period, but the difference is the volume gets lower, and then there seems to be quite a bit of buying when the price tries to test the level where October 10th tested, this white dashed line over here. However, the rejection from above the orange key level of $79 is also pretty strong. So we are having this white cross right now. So this cross indicates that the bulls and the bears are taking a breath. All right, we both pushed hard enough. During this Christmas week, let's make things a little bit slower. Okay, so I hope that this may be a U-turn situation where the selling climax shows up and then it gets to the automatic rally next. All right, because sometimes you see these kind of scenarios and then it goes up, and sometimes it's just like you've got a, I'm trying to see whether you have, we can find some of these. Yeah, you see this, and then you see white cross, and then there may be still a little bit of selling, but it's close to the end. And then there's clear buying from the bottom, and then it gets to the automatic rally. So that's one of the examples I'm trying to show you. All right, and then daily charts. Okay, this white dash line we already talked about. That's around $70 to $73. And obviously this orange key level of 79, if it continues, okay, look at what happened on October 10th. If it continues to range bound over here and get a strength, look at the lower volume we have over the past 2-3 weeks. We want to see some kind of white bars like that tall, pushing the price back to above 79 and maybe even higher to show us the automatic rally after the selling climax. So the current date indicated is somewhere near the end of March and beginning of April, if the price eventually goes above the orange, but still get rejected by this, to confirm that a longer sideways trend is established. Yeah, it's like 3 to 4 months from now. From a daily perspective, you can say, oh, that is confirmed, but a weekly perspective, that's a totally different story, right? The bigger trend is what we're trying to measure. what happens in the daily stays within daily, and we want to see the bigger picture. It's things like changing for the bigger perspective. That's more important. Okay, let's not get this mixed up with the weekly. So after Litecoin week for SWE, there was a pause, and it's still hovering around the 1.5 orange key level. I am a bit hesitate to say it's the selling climax, because referencing what happened during the 2024 accumulation, as well as we being a rather young coin, its price profile may not have settled completely yet. Alright, looking at the daily chart, it meets the 23rd of December window to confirm that it's breaking outside of the downtrend. That's also another reason why I try not to say it has reached its selling climax, but it looks like at the $1.30 level, it's finding a bit of stronger support. Alright, so let's bring this line to here, and yeah, it's understandable there's some reference price actions from the time back in early 2024. You see these candles, heads and tails, and wicks ended up around this level right before the other white dash line that I've previously drawn. So the next 2 days, somewhere before the 29th or around the 29th, the other opportunity would come, but this is not a very strong support level, so I won't put too high a hope on that, even though there's a chance that it's going to break out at that point. So let me move this over. Next week when we come back, if it does break outside of the downtrend, that's a good news, but if it doesn't, it shouldn't be a surprising thing for you, because the key is this red key level of $1. Sorry. Yeah, that's around January 9th. After SWE, we have tier. So Celestia, similar, very similar. Volume slightly declining, but last week this wick from the top is really alarming. So while this week we're ending up with a cross, we may end up with a cross with the remaining 50 hours roughly. What October 10th tested, this white solid line at around 27 cents 55, that's still somewhere within reach. Alright, these volume on the selling days have dropped, and we have this buying today. Best if the buying continues, but still you see the price is still trading at the weaker side of the channel. Assuming it's really going to take that long to reach the stronger half of the channel and stays above this white solid line at above 27 cents 50, it's pointing towards the mid of March before a trend change confirmation is going to come. Alright, and next we have Tezos. Tezos, looking at what we have over here, the selling climax may have appeared. Alright, looking at the volume this week, it has clearly come up compared to the previous weeks. So let's hope this is the case and that it will continue towards the automatic rally. You see it's got rejection from the center line of the downtrend, okay? We have drawn this box for a couple of weeks already. I haven't adjusted this, so it clearly shows that it's still having its effect. And last Thursday, Friday, it came below the white line. So let's hope it doesn't do it anymore, that it really is going to trade sideways along or above the white solid line, and even if it comes below the red key level of 48 cents, roughly 48 cents 50, then it's going to point to the mid of March to confirm a trend change. If, however, what's been doing today, if the volume continues and it goes above the red line, red key level, then it's going to confirm earlier, somewhere before before 24th February. Okay, so these are the ones within the early accumulation cycle. Now we get to the final few that are at the late stage of accumulation. So this one for Aptos, APT, very deep test. It may well be a spring, the last shakeout, before it climbs back to show us a sign of strength. Alright, best to have advancement like this during the week of end of September with higher volume. You know, that over there, you see the volume bar was very low, and that's not going to sustain. Alright, we want something like back in June, July time with higher volume. Then that would make it staying or even go to the next distribution cycle. Alright, so this paper hands, diamond hands go very deep, and finally, like in this week especially, it found support from the center line, bounced up on the 19th, and then trading along this yellow dash line of around $1.63, and the date it's pointing towards is the 2nd of January. Alright, however, if it really gets rejected, then we have to wait till like the third week or getting around the 22nd of January before the trend change confirmation is going to come. Alright, AVAX. Again, the testing seems to get more gradual or like more mild, and we see last week there was a little bit clearer buying from the bottom below the blue key level of $12.20. October 10th went to a way lower level at around $8.80, so that still is a reference for us, because the spring period where the price did its final test before it surges to the new distribution also landed at around that 8.8 level. So be really cautious that even though the price trend seems to have exited the downtrend, it's not clearly over yet, because after the sideways trend it took a deeper dip and it may develop into another downtrend, going all the way to test this October 10th or 2023 spring level. Alright, that's for AVAX. And then we have Chiles. For Chiles, slightly better picture. You know, at least it's not going all the way down. It's going up for 5 consecutive weeks already. Just that it's still battling around this red key level of 0.036. Right? The good thing is that we have a wick from the bottom, more buying from the bottom. However, the volume, in contrast, got lower. So there may be rejection coming next week. Hope that I'm wrong about this, because if tomorrow and the day after we've got more volume pushing it up, then that's a good news. If not, the week after has to clearly stay above the red line instead of showing us the rejection. If we look at the daily, it clearly has been trying over the course of the entire week since Saturday stay above the red key level, alright, 0.036. But what happened on both the 20th and the 21st clearly shows selling pressure. At those points, you see the wicks from the top clearly. Just until today, it got up higher, but the volume you can see is only about 40 to 50% of what it had on the 19th and 20th. And 20th actually combined quite a bit of selling, so only the 19th can be of good reference. So we want to see something like the 19th for it to clearly stay or close above the red key level. Alright, that's for Chiliz. And then we've got Polkadot. Polkadot still edging towards that 1.52 level. Alright, these levels we took reference from the October 10th in particular, because if we go all the way back to 2020, it didn't reach that low as well. Okay, so these tests of paper hands, diamond hands is continuing. Let me get rid of this one, and we want to see the sign of strength for Polkadot with clear volume. So something like what we have in the week of November 3rd, but the candle has to be clearly, going up. That one was not bad. There was quite a bit of buying, people buying the dip, but eventually we get this series of 1.5 months of seeking the low point where the October 10th tested. All right, the price is still trading within this downtrend, and a trend change confirmation would come when we get into the new year. If that is missed, if even the 1.52 isn't going to provide support, the next support at around 96 cents, that's the dip of October 10th, would come somewhere in mid-January. So if the price continues to trade this range, eventually it's going to confirm whether the downtrend is going to continue. That means the price will go lower than October 10th, or is finding support and breaks outside of this downtrend that started somewhere in early November. Alright, then flow. Similar, that it's actually worse than Polkadot is that it has gone lower than October 10th, below the red key level of 18 cents 80, and last week's volume was enormous compared to the previous 4 weeks. Alright, you may say there may be people buying in because the price spread wasn't as bad as the week before, and that we are seeing a cross right now with much lower volume. That may be a good sign that it finally exhibits a U-turn. Hopefully, you see how deep the price has dropped. If a U-turn really happens, I've drawn this white dashed line over here. That's the support for the past 6 to 7 days of trading. If this really forms a solid enough support, that points to the end of Feb, where this trend is going to be confirmed, the sideways trend. Of course, it can go higher than the red key level of around 18 cents 80, and that points towards an earlier date where a trend change confirmation would come, the 11th of Feb. Okay, that means this downtrend is eventually over. Just that we're not there yet. Okay, be careful. This may not be the end of it. The support may not be strong enough, especially if we see some selling clearly today. Okay, then we have Casper. Casper, not as bad as the other ones. It's not at a very late stage. It's just past the automatic rally 4 weeks ago. So it's expected that it has these kind of sideways tests. And in terms of the daily chart, within the sideways trend, it's currently, from the automatic rally, it's coming back down to test the bottom of the sideways trend, which it may break the ceiling of this smaller downtrend in no time, somewhere between now to 10th of Jan, and then it may retest the ceiling of the sideways trend, which is very close to the red key level of 0.065. Alright, and last but not least, we have Polkadot. Polkadot, similar to Flow and some of the others, testing very, very deep level. Not even the October 10th went to that low. So if you ask me where does these two levels come from, they are from the MATIC chart. Because if you look at POL, a lot of those charts doesn't provide the early history of Polygon. Polygon previously was having the call sign MATIC. So you can search for MATIC and get these two reference levels. Daily chart shows it's still trading within the downtrend that started back in September. All right, and it's trading obviously on the stronger side of the channel and is leading towards the 2nd of January date. Today it's still getting rejection from the ceiling of the channel, but we are getting very close to the 0.095 level that Polygon in the very early days has that kind of price level. So that's going to be very key, whether it's going to finally exit its downtrend from that point. And by next week, when we come back, we should be having the answer. All right, or very close to having the answer. Oh, thanks for joining me for these 20 plus L0 to L2 coins spirit run session. Enjoy your holidays and see you in a few days time. Actually tomorrow I'll be